The salvage yard floated in the empty space between two dying stars. Thousands of broken ships sat in long rows, their metal bodies cold and dark. Some had been warships once. Others had carried families across the galaxy. Now they were all the same. They were garbage waiting to be cut apart and sold for parts. Park walked between the rows every morning. She wore a heavy work suit covered in oil stains and burn marks. Her boots made loud sounds on the metal walkways. She was 34 years old, and she had been working at this salvage yard for 6 years. The aliens who ran the place called her the human who fixed broken things. They did not mean it as a compliment. The Galactic Consortium controlled this part of space. 12 different species worked together under one government. Humans had joined only 50 years ago, and most aliens still looked at them like they were children who had wandered into an important meeting. Humans were small. Humans were weak. Humans lived such short lives that aliens wondered why they bothered doing anything at all. Did not care what they thought. She had a job to do. Today was auction day. Once every month, the consortium sold off the ships that nobody wanted. Wealthy merchants came to buy vessels they could repair and sell again. Engineers came looking for rare parts. Collectors came searching for pieces of history. Came because she had nothing better to do on her day off. She stood at the back of the crowd and watched. Her supervisor, a tall name, stood near the front. He had 4 arms and blue skin that changed color with his mood. Right now it was pale, which meant he was bored. Had worked at the salvage yard for 200 years. He had seen everything. The auctioneer was a small creature with too many eyes. It floated above the crowd on a platform and called out numbers in a sharp voice. Ship after ship sold quickly. A transport vessel went to a merchant from the inner worlds. A mining ship went to a company that would strip it down to nothing. A pleasure yacht went to a collector who wanted to display it in his private museum. Then the auctioneer paused. Its many eyes blinked in a pattern that suggested discomfort. Next item, it announced, lot number 4017, the Silent Dawn. The crowd went quiet, looked up with sudden interest. The Silent Dawn was a legend in the salvage yard. It had arrived 200 years ago, before was born, before humans had even discovered faster-than-light travel. It was a massive warship, nearly 2 kilometers long, built by a species that no longer existed. The Meridians had vanished from the galaxy thousands of years ago. Nobody knew why. They had simply disappeared, leaving behind empty worlds and dead ships. The Silent Dawn was the last Meridian vessel ever found, and for 200 years it had sat in the salvage yard, untouched. Every engineer in the consortium had examined it. They had all reached the same conclusion. The ship was worthless. Its power core was dead. Its technology was so old that nobody could understand it. The metal was strange, the systems were strange, everything about it was strange. It would cost more to repair than any possible profit could justify. The auctioneer called out the starting price. It was low, embarrassingly low. The price of a broken shuttle, not a 2-kilometer warship. Nobody raised their hand. Felt something stir in her chest. She had walked past the Silent Dawn many times. She had pressed her hand against its hull and felt the cold metal beneath her fingers. She had looked at its dark windows and wondered what secrets it held. The auctioneer lowered the price again. Still nobody moved. Turned his head and saw standing at the back of the crowd. His blue skin flickered with amusement. He knew what she was thinking. He had seen her stare at the old ship too many times. "Do not do it," he called out to her. "That ship is a curse. It will take everything you have and give you nothing in return." Raised her hand. The crowd turned to look at her. 100 alien eyes stared with confusion and pity. A human was buying the Silent Dawn. A human mechanic with oil on her clothes and dirt under her fingernails. It was the funniest thing they had seen in years. The auctioneer confirmed the sale. Had just spent her entire savings. 6 years of work, gone in a single moment. She owned a dead ship that everyone in the galaxy had given up on. walked over to her after the auction ended. His skin was now dark blue, which meant he was worried. "You made a mistake," he said. "I have watched many people try to fix that ship, engineers from the greatest species in the consortium. They all failed. What makes you think a human can succeed where they could not?" Looked at the old ship in the distance. It was dark and silent, a shadow against the stars. "Because I am not trying to fix it," she said. "I am trying to understand it." Shook his head slowly. He had liked working with. She was strange for a human, quiet and focused and patient, but she had just destroyed her future for a pile of ancient metal. "Good luck," he said. "You will need it." Walked alone to the silent dawn. The ship was so large that it took her 30 minutes to reach the main entrance. The door was sealed with a mechanism that had not moved in 2 centuries. She pulled out her tools and began to work. 3 hours later, the door opened with a sound like a dying animal. Old air rushed out, cold and stale, turned on her helmet light and stepped inside. The corridor was dark. Dust covered every surface. Strange symbols decorated the walls, writing in a language that had been dead for thousands of years. Walked slowly, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She found the bridge first. The command chairs were sized for creatures taller than humans, with strange shapes that suggested joints in unusual places. The control panels were dark, covered in dust and time. Ran her fingers over the buttons and switches. She could not read the labels, but she could see the logic in their arrangement. Then she went down to the engine room. It took her 2 hours to find it. The ship was a maze of corridors and sealed doors. But finally she stood before the main power core, a massive cylinder that stretched from floor to ceiling. According to every report, this core was dead, burned out, beyond repair. Examined it carefully. She looked at every cable, every connection, every seal. She pressed her hands against the cold metal and closed her eyes. Then she saw it. The power core was not broken. The cables were not burned out. Everything was intact, perfectly preserved. Someone had simply turned it off. Someone had deliberately shut down every system, sealed every door, and walked away. The Meridians had not abandoned this ship because it was damaged. They had put it to sleep. They had hidden it. The question was why. Sat down on the cold floor of the engine room. She looked up at the massive power core and felt her heart beating fast in her chest. Everyone thought this ship was worthless. Everyone thought it was a mistake to buy it, but knew something they did not. This ship was not dead, it was waiting. And she was going to wake it up. 3 weeks after buying the Silent Dawn, sent a message to Earth. She contacted the only person she trusted completely. His name was, and he had been her friend since they were children growing up in the same crowded station above Korea. Was 29 years old and worked as a communications specialist for a shipping company. It was boring work, he always said. He spent his days making sure cargo ships could talk to each other across the empty void of space. But he was brilliant with languages and signals and codes. If anyone could help understand the Meridian writing, it was him. He arrived at the salvage yard 1 month after her message reached him, was waiting at the dock when his transport landed. He stepped out carrying a single bag, his dark hair messy from the long journey. "You look terrible," he said. Laughed. She had not slept more than 4 hours a night since buying the ship. Her eyes were red, her clothes were dirty, and she had lost weight from forgetting to eat. "Wait until you see the ship," she said. "Then you will understand." She led him through the salvage yard to the Silent Dawn, stopped walking when he saw it. His mouth fell open. "That is not a ship," he said. "That is a city." The Silent Dawn was enormous. Its hull stretched into the darkness, disappearing beyond the range of the salvage yard lights. Even from the outside, could see the strange beauty of its design. The Meridians had built something special, something meant to last forever. They went inside together, showed him everything she had discovered. The sealed corridors, the sleeping systems, the power core that had been deliberately shut down. Listened carefully, asking questions, taking notes on a small device he carried everywhere. When they reached the engine room, pointed at the main power core. "I need your help," she said. "There are logs in the ship's computer, the captain's final messages, but they are in Meridian and I cannot read them." Examined the control panels. The writing was strange, full of curves and dots that seemed to flow like water. He had studied many alien languages, but this one was different. It was older than anything he had ever seen. "This will take time," he said. "We have time," replied. "Nobody else cares about this ship." They worked together for the next 2 months, focused on the language while focused on the machines. She crawled through maintenance tunnels and opened sealed panels. She traced cables and tested connections. Slowly, piece by piece, she began to understand how the ship worked. The Meridians had been brilliant engineers. Their technology was not outdated at all. It was simply different. Where modern ships used computers to control everything, the Silent Dawn used a combination of mechanical and biological systems. The ship was almost alive, with organic components woven into its metal framework. One night called to the bridge. His face was pale in the dim light. "I found something," he said, "the captain's final log." They sat together and watched the recording play on a screen that had not shown images in thousands of years. The captain was tall and thin, with skin like polished stone and eyes that reflected light like mirrors. She spoke in a voice that was both musical and sad. Translated as she spoke. "They are coming," the captain said. "The ones who eat worlds. We thought we could fight them, but we were wrong. They are too many, too hungry, too patient. Our fleet is destroyed. Our worlds are burning. We are the last." The recording flickered. The captain looked directly at the camera. "We cannot defeat them," she continued, "but perhaps our children will. We have hidden this ship, our greatest weapon, in a place where it will not be found. We have silenced its heart so the devourers cannot sense it. Someday, someone will wake it. Someday, someone will finish what we could not." The recording ended. The screen went dark. And sat in silence for a long time. "Devourers," finally said. "What are devourers?" Shook his head. "I do not know. There is nothing about them in any consortium records." "But they were real," said. "Real enough to destroy an entire species." The next morning, a visitor arrived at the salvage yard. Her name was, and she was an ambassador from the government. She had heard rumors about a human who was trying to restore the Silent Dawn. She wanted to see for herself. Was smaller than most, with delicate features and skin that shifted through shades of green and gold. She watched work with open curiosity. "Why do you do this?" she asked. "This ship has been examined by the greatest engineers in the consortium. They all agreed it was worthless." Did not stop working. She was reconnecting a power cable, her hands steady despite the exhaustion in her eyes. "They were wrong," she said. "How do you know?" "Because I listen to the ship," replied. "I do not just look at it and decide what it should be. I ask it what it wants to become." Did not understand. She had never met anyone who talked about machines like they were living things, but she stayed and watched as worked through the day and into the night. 18 hours later finally stopped. Her hands were shaking from exhaustion, but she had a small smile on her face. "Watch," she said. She pressed a button on the control panel. For a moment nothing happened, then slowly a light flickered on, then another, then another. A soft hum filled the air, the sound of systems waking after thousands of years of sleep. Stepped back in shock. Her skin flashed bright yellow, the color of pure amazement. "Impossible," she whispered. Appeared in the doorway, breathing hard from running. He said the ship just sent a signal, an automated message. "What does it say?" He looked at her with wide eyes. "It says warning." The lights continued to spread through the ship, corridor by corridor, room by room. The Silent Dawn was waking up, and somewhere in its ancient memory, There was a warning that had waited thousands of years to be heard. Looked at the control panel. The Meridian writing was starting to make sense now. She could see patterns, meanings, intentions. "Something is coming," she said quietly. Moved closer. "What do you mean?" Pointed at the screen. "The ship is not just a weapon. It is a lighthouse, a warning signal. The Meridians built it to wake when the Devourers returned." "But the Devourers are a myth," said. "A story from a dead species." Shook her head. The Meridians did not think so. They gave up everything to hide this ship. They sacrificed their civilization to give someone a chance to fight back. She turned to look at with tired but determined eyes. They were waiting for someone to find it, someone who would not give up, someone who would listen. The ship hummed around them, power flowing through systems that had been silent for. The silent dawn was silent no more. And somewhere in the deep darkness between galaxies, something ancient stirred, something that had been patient for a very long time, something that was finally ready to feed again. The warning had been sent, now had to make sure someone was ready to answer it. The news spread across the consortium like fire through dry grass. A human mechanic had done the impossible. She had awakened a Meridian warship that engineers from 12 species had declared dead. Within days, the salvage yard was filled with visitors who wanted to see the miracle for themselves. Ignored them all. She had too much work to do. The silent dawn was awake, but it was far from ready. Thousands of systems needed to be checked and repaired. The ship was like a patient waking from a long sleep, weak and confused and hungry. It needed care. It needed time. It needed people who understood that bringing something back to life was harder than building something new. Knew she could not do it alone. Was brilliant with languages, but he was not an engineer. Ambassador was helpful, but she had her own duties to attend to. Needed a crew. She needed humans. She sent messages to everyone she knew. Old friends from Earth, former colleagues from other salvage yards, mechanics and engineers and pilots who had been told they were not good enough, not smart enough, not important enough to matter in a galaxy full of ancient species. The first to arrive was Han. Was 41 years old and had served in the Earth Defense Fleet for 20 years. She had been one of the best pilots in human space, able to fly any ship through any situation. But she had been forced to retire after speaking out against her commanders. They said she was too aggressive, too independent, too human. She had spent the last 3 years flying cargo shuttles and dreaming of something more. She walked into the engine room where was working and looked around with sharp eyes. "This ship is a mess," she said. Wiped sweat from her forehead. "I know, can you help me fix it?" Smiled for the first time in years. "I thought you would never ask." The second to arrive was only 26, young even by human standards. He had graduated at the top of his class from the Consortium Engineering Academy, the first human to ever receive that honor. But no alien company would hire him. They said he was too inexperienced, too young, too human. He had been working small jobs on remote stations, wasting his talents on broken air recyclers and faulty gravity generators. He examined the Silent Dawn's power core with wide eyes. "This technology is beautiful," he said. "I have never seen anything like it." "Can you understand it?" asked. Nodded slowly. "Give me time, I will learn its secrets." Together, the growing crew worked day and night, mapped the ship's interior, creating detailed plans of every corridor and room, studied the power systems, learning how to speak the ship's mechanical language, continued translating Meridian records, uncovering more information about the vessel's true purpose, and moved between them all, coordinating their efforts, solving problems, keeping everyone fed and rested and focused. 3 months passed, then 6, then 9. The Silent Dawn transformed under their hands. Systems that had been dark came back to life. Engines that had not fired in thousands of years began to hum with power. Weapons that could tear through the strongest armor were tested and calibrated. And with each discovery, the crew learned more about what they were dealing with. The Meridians had built the Silent Dawn to fight a war against an enemy they could not defeat. The ship's weapons were designed to destroy massive targets, vessels large enough to swallow moons. Its shields could withstand forces that would vaporize ordinary ships. Its sensors could detect movement across distances that made light itself seem slow. But the most important discovery came from. He called everyone to the main engineering bay one evening, his young face serious. "I found something," he said, "hidden in the ship's core programming, a message from the original builders." He activated a display. The image showed the galaxy as it had looked thousands of years ago before the Meridians disappeared. Points of light represented their worlds, their stations, their fleets. Then the image changed. Dark shapes appeared at the edge of the galaxy, moving inward. One by one, the points of light went dark. The Devourers said, "They came from outside our galaxy. They do not want resources or territory. They want to consume everything. Every ship, every world, every living thing. They ate the Meridian civilization in less than 100 years." The crew stood in silence, watching the ancient recording. "The Meridians built this ship as a last hope," continued. "They believed the Devourers would return someday. They wanted to give future generations a weapon that could fight back." Spoke first, "How do we know the Devourers are still out there?" As if in answer, the ship's sensors activated on their own. A warning symbol appeared on every screen, pulsing red in the dim light. Checked the readings and turned pale. "Long-range sensors are detecting something," he said. "A fleet, hundreds of ships. They are coming from the direction the Meridians fled from." "How long until they arrive?" asked. His voice was quiet, 6 months, maybe less. The news reached the consortium government within hours. Panic spread through every species. Emergency meetings were called on every world. Military fleets were mobilized, supplies were stockpiled, evacuation plans were drawn up. And in the middle of it all, the consortium demanded that surrender the Silent Dawn. A delegation arrived at the salvage yard, led by officials from 5 different species. They stood before with grave expressions and formal words. "This vessel is too important to remain in human hands," the lead official said. "The consortium must take control." Stood her ground. She was tired and dirty and small compared to the aliens who towered over her, but she did not back down. "This ship is mine," she said. "I bought it, I restored it, I understand it. You cannot take it." "We can and we will," the official replied. "This is a matter of galactic security." "Then you will have to take it by force," said. "And if you try, I will shut down every system on this ship. I will destroy it before I let you take it from me." The delegation exchanged worried looks. They had seen what happened when the consortium tried to force humans to do anything. Humans were stubborn. Humans were unpredictable. Humans would burn everything down rather than submit. The officials left without the ship. That night gathered her crew in the common room. They sat together in tired silence, eating simple food and drinking bitter coffee. "They will try again," said. "They will not give up." "I know," replied, "but we need time. This ship is not ready for war." Looked up from his meal. "How much time do we need?" Considered the question. The engines were working, the weapons were functional, the shields were holding, but there was still so much to do. 3 months, she said, maybe 4. "We have 6, said, "maybe less." "Then we work faster," replied. She looked at each of them, these humans who had left everything behind to join her impossible dream. "We did not come this far to fail." They nodded. They understood. They were humans, and this is what humans did. They found broken things and made them whole. They faced impossible challenges and refused to surrender. They took the garbage that everyone else had thrown away and turned it into something incredible. The Silent Dawn was almost ready. The Devourers were coming, and a crew of humans stood between the galaxy and destruction. It was not the future any of them had expected, but it was the future they had chosen, and they would not let it go without a fight. The Consortium Defense Fleet gathered at the edge of known space. 3,000 ships from 12 species formed a wall of metal and fire. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. An admiral stood at its head. Was a species known for their brilliant tactical minds and complete lack of emotion. He had commanded fleets for 200 years. He had won battles that younger officers only read about in history books. He was the greatest military leader the Consortium had ever produced. And he hated humans. He hated their chaos and their noise and their constant need to prove themselves. He hated how they questioned orders and challenged authority and refused to accept their place in the galaxy. Most of all, he hated that a human mechanic had restored a weapon that could change the course of the coming war. He sent a message to the salvage yard 3 days before the fleet departed for battle. "Bring the Silent Dawn to join the defense force," he ordered. "You will serve under my command. You will follow my orders. You will not act independently." Received the message in her quarters. She was exhausted. The final preparations had pushed her crew to their limits, but the ship was ready. After more than a year of work, the Silent Dawn was finally complete. She wrote a simple reply: "We will join your fleet. We will fight at your side, but we will not surrender our ship." Did not respond. He did not need to. He would deal with the human problem after the battle was won. The Silent Dawn left the salvage yard for the first time in 200 years, stood on the bridge, surrounded by her crew, sat at the pilot's station, her hands moving over controls she had memorized through months of practice, monitored communications, listening to the nervous chatter from Consortium ships, watched the engineering displays, ready to adjust power at a moment's notice. And a new face joined them. Bay, a doctor who had served on human colony worlds for 15 years. She had arrived 3 weeks ago, answering's final call for crew members. She was 38 years old, calm and steady, with gentle hands that had saved thousands of lives. "We have medical bays ready," she reported. "If the battle goes badly, we can treat hundreds of wounded." "If the battle goes badly," said, "there will not be anyone left to treat." The fleet assembled at the designated coordinates. The Silent Dawn took its position near the center of the formation, surrounded by Consortium warships. The alien crews stared at the massive Meridian vessel through there. Some felt hope, most felt doubt. Admiral contacted through a direct channel. "Your weapons had better work," he said. "If this ship fails, I will hold you personally responsible." "They will work," replied. "We did not spend a year rebuilding this ship to fail now." Ended the communication without another word. The waiting began. 3 days passed, then 5, then 7. The fleet hung in the darkness of space, sensors pointed toward the unknown. Tension built with every hour. Crews who had trained their entire lives for war found themselves unable to sleep, unable to eat, unable to think about anything except what was coming. On the 8th day, the Devourers arrived. They emerged from the darkness like shadows taking form. Hundreds of ships, each one larger than anything the Consortium had ever built. Their hulls were black and organic, covered in ridges and spines that made them look like creatures instead of machines. They moved in perfect silence, cutting through space with a grace that seemed almost peaceful. Then they attacked. The first wave hit the Consortium fleet like a hammer. Weapons that burned hotter than stars tore through shields and armor. Ships that had taken decades to build were destroyed in seconds. Explosions bloomed across the battle line, silent flowers of light and death. Admiral shouted orders. The fleet tried to respond, tried to fight back, tried to survive. But the Devourers were too fast, too powerful, too many. For every enemy ship that fell, 3 Consortium vessels died. Watched the battle from the bridge of the Silent Dawn. Her crew was ready, gripped the flight controls with white knuckles, had pushed the power systems to maximum, tracked enemy movements on his display. Now said. The Silent Dawn surged forward. It broke through the consortium formation and drove straight toward the heart of the Devourer fleet. Alien commanders screamed warnings. They thought was mad. They thought she was leading her crew to certain death. Then the Silent Dawn opened fire. Weapons that had been sleeping for thousands of years unleashed their fury. Beams of energy that burned through Devourer armor like paper. Missiles that tracked their targets through any evasion. Shields that absorbed attacks that would have destroyed a dozen ordinary ships. The Devourers noticed. 100 enemy vessels turned toward the Silent Dawn. They recognized it. They remembered it. This was the ship that had escaped them once before. This was the weapon the Meridians had hidden to be used against them. They would not let it escape again. The battle became focused. The entire Devourer fleet converged on a single target. The Silent Dawn fought alone against impossible odds, its weapons never stopping, its shields flickering under constant assault. Held onto her command chair as the ship shook from impact after impact. Alarms screamed warnings. Damage reports flooded in from every section. Shield Generator 2 is failing, shouted. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Medical bays are receiving casualties, reported. We need more time. Keep fighting, ordered. We hold as long as we can. Flew the ship like it was an extension of her own body. She dodged attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. She found gaps in the enemy formation and exploited them. She kept the Silent Dawn alive through skill and determination and sheer stubborn refusal to die. The Consortium fleet, watching the humans fight, gave them courage. Ships that had been retreating turned back toward the battle. Crews that had been ready to surrender found new strength. But it was not enough. The Devourers were too many. For everyone that fell, more arrived. The Silent Dawn was taking damage faster than it could be repaired. Then the Devourers broadcast a message. Every screen on every ship displayed the same image. A Devourer commander, a creature of shadow and hunger, speaking in a voice that sounded like breaking bones. We have waited for this ship to wake, it said. We have been patient. We knew someday it would emerge from hiding. Now we finish what we started. Now we consume the last hope of the prey. Stared at the screen. The creature was ancient. It had hunted the Meridians across the galaxy. It had destroyed their civilization. And now it wanted to destroy everything else. You are wrong, she said quietly. The Meridians did not hide this ship because they were afraid. They hid it because they knew someone would come. Someone who would not give up. Someone who would find a way. She turned to her crew. They were injured and exhausted and afraid, but they were still fighting. They were still standing. We are not Meridians, said. We are humans, and we do not know how to quit. The Silent Dawn turned toward the Devourer command ship. Its weapons charged to full power. Its engines burned bright enough to blind sensors. The final phase of the battle was about to begin. The Silent Dawn was dying. Fire burned in a dozen compartments. Hull breaches opened to the cold vacuum of space. Power systems that had worked perfectly for months were now failing one by one. The ship that had spent over a year restoring was being torn apart by an enemy that had waited thousands of years for revenge. But the crew kept fighting. Flew through the chaos with impossible skill, dodging attacks that should have killed them all. Ran from console to console, rerouting power from dying systems to ones that still worked. Coordinated with the few consortium ships that remained, trying to organize some kind of defense. Moved through the medical bays, saving lives even as the ship fell apart around her. And searched for an answer. She knew the ship had a final weapon, something the Meridians had built for exactly this situation. Something powerful enough to destroy the Devourer fleet in a single moment. But every time she had tried to access it, the system had rejected her commands. She ran to the main engineering bay, dodging falling debris and sparking cables. The room was a mess of broken equipment and flickering lights, but the central console was still working, displaying information in Meridian script that had learned to read over months of study. "Show me," she whispered to the ship. "Show me how to save everyone." The display changed. A new screen appeared, one she had never seen before. It showed a diagram of the ship's core and at its center, a device that pulsed with contained energy. The pulse generator. Read the instructions with growing understanding. The device could release all of the ship's power in a single massive wave. It would destroy every devourer ship within range. It would end the battle. It would save the galaxy. But there was a price. The pulse generator required manual activation from inside the core itself. The radiation levels during activation would be fatal. Someone would have to stay behind. Someone would have to die. Closed her eyes. She had always known it might come to this. She had always known that some sacrifices could not be avoided. She had saved a ship that everyone thought was worthless. She had built a crew from people the galaxy had rejected. She had come farther than anyone had expected. Now she would finish the journey. She started toward the core access hatch. Her hand was on the release when a voice stopped her. "No." She turned, stood behind her, his young face streaked with sweat and blood from a cut on his forehead. "I saw the readings," he said. "I know what you are planning. I am not going to let you do it." "Someone has to," replied. "There is no other way." "There is always another way." Stepped forward. "You taught me that. You looked at this ship when everyone said it was worthless. You found another way. Now let me find one too." He pushed past her and began working at the console. His hands flew over the controls, faster than had ever seen anyone move. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Rerouting power," he said. "If I can connect the communications array to the pulse generator, we can send the activation signal remotely. We do not have to be inside the core." "That is impossible," said. "The systems are not compatible." Smiled grimly. "Then I will make them compatible." His voice crackled over the intercom. "We have a problem. The Devourer command ship is moving toward us. If it reaches us before we can fire, everything is over." "How long do we have?" asked. 5 minutes, maybe less." Looked at, he was already deep in the ship systems, rewiring connections that had not been touched in thousands of years. His genius was the only thing standing between them and death. 4 minutes passed. "Reported from the medical bay. I have wounded crew here. Whatever you are planning, do it fast." 3 minutes. His voice came through the intercom, strained but steady. "I cannot dodge forever. The ship is too damaged." 2 minutes. Shouted in triumph. "I have it. The connection is complete, but someone needs to send the activation signal from the bridge." "I will do it," said immediately. "Tell me what to press." 1 minute. The Devourer command ship loomed on the, larger than anything had ever seen. Its weapons were charging. Its mouth, if it could be called a mouth, was opening to swallow them whole. Now screamed, "Send it now." Press the button. For a single heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the silent dawn released all of its power in one blinding moment. A wave of energy expanded outward from the ship, moving faster than light, tearing through everything in its path. The Devourer command ship was first to fall. Its massive hull cracked and shattered, breaking apart into a million pieces. Then the other Devourer ships began to die, one after another, consumed by the very energy they had tried to steal from the Meridians thousands of years ago. In less than 10 seconds, it was over. The Devourer fleet was gone. Every ship, every creature, every shadow had been erased from existence. The pulse faded, leaving only silence and stars. The silent dawn drifted in the darkness, badly damaged but still intact. Its lights flickered. Its engines sputtered, but it had survived. On the bridge, the crew sat in stunned silence. "Did we do it?" finally asked. "Is it over?" Looked at the The space that had been filled with enemy ships was now empty. The consortium fleet, what remained of it, was regrouping in the distance. "We did it," she said. "It is over." The celebrations lasted for days. The consortium declared a galactic holiday. Monuments were planned. Songs were written. The names of the Silent Dawn's crew were spoken in reverent tones across 12 species. Admiral contacted personally. "I was wrong about humans," he said. His voice was stiff, but his words were sincere. "You showed courage and skill that I did not expect. I apologize for my earlier judgment." Accepted his apology with grace. She did not hold grudges. There were more important things to think about. The consortium offered her command of a new fleet. They wanted to build more ships based on the Silent Dawn's design. They wanted her to lead them into a new era of galactic defense. She refused. "Thank you," she told the officials who brought the offer, "but I am not a commander. I am a mechanic. I fix broken things." The Silent Dawn was repaired over the following months, oversaw every detail just as she had overseen the original restoration. Her crew stayed with her, had found a ship worth flying, had found problems worth solving, had found stories worth telling, had found lives worth saving. Other humans began arriving in consortium space. Engineers, mechanics, pilots, doctors. They came because they had heard the stories. They came because they wanted to prove themselves. They came because a salvage yard worker had shown them what was possible. On the anniversary of the battle, stood in the engine room of the Silent Dawn. The power core hummed with steady energy. The ship was whole again, ready for whatever came next. Found her there, just as he had found her so many times before. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Touched the cool metal of the power core. She remembered the day she had first entered this room, alone and uncertain, with nothing but her tools and her determination. "I am thinking about the Meridians," she said. "They gave up everything to hide this ship. They sacrificed their civilization so that someone could fight back, and they never got to see it happen." "Do you think they would be proud?" asked. Smiled. "I think they would be amazed." She turned to look at her friend. They thought the ship was their final hope, but it was not the ship that mattered. It was the people who found it, the people who refused to give up. Nodded, he understood. "So what do we do now?" he asked. "The galaxy is safe. The Devourers are gone. What is next for the crew of the Silent Dawn?" Walked toward the door, her boots making familiar sounds on the metal floor. "We find the next broken thing," she said, "and we fix it." Behind her, the Silent Dawn hummed with quiet power. It was no longer abandoned. It was no longer forgotten. It was the greatest ship in the galaxy, and it had been saved by a human who saw value where everyone else saw garbage. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewports. Somewhere out there, more challenges waited. More problems needed solving. More impossible things needed to be made possible. And a crew of humans was ready to meet them. Not because they were the strongest or the oldest or the most advanced species in the galaxy, but because they were human, and humans never stopped trying. They never stopped hopping. They never stopped fixing what was broken.